So I'm in the College Park city of Georgia, which is just south of Atlanta. This is considered the most dangerous city in the state of Georgia. I started filming a little sooner than I wanted to. I got off the freeway and there was a bunch of tents and homeless people on the side. And then I pulled up a little bit further and there's a bunch of graffiti everywhere. You can see this is a homeless guy right here. There's a bunch of graffiti everywhere. There were people just crossing the street right in the middle of all the traffic. And I thought, okay, I need to start filming sooner. And of course, we've gotten through that part already right now. But we're headed more towards the city. We're right kind of on the skirts of it. And of course, I probably could have blown that light. Probably could have blown that light. Or gone through that light legally. So anyway, this city has a population of around 14,000 and it's declining. It's 81% black, 9% white, 4% Hispanic, and 1% Asian. So it's not really diverse, although there's a share of every race in there. It's not very diverse. The average age is 32, with only 11% of the population being seniors, so it's a younger population. And like all bad cities, the male-female ratio is off. It's 47% male and 53% female. And there's only a 24% home ownership rate here. So only 1 in every 4 people own their own home. That's 61% lower than the national average. That's one of the lowest numbers I've seen on a city that's of any size. And that's not a good thing for a city, to have nobody owning a house basically and everybody renting, because nobody's going to care about anything. Because when you're renting, you don't care the same about a place as you do when you own a home there and you have a little more permanency to a certain neighborhood or a certain city or whatever. The average income is around this, now it's saying East Point city limit. So we're just gonna call this is, we're gonna get to the College Park area. This is apparently East Point. We'll get to the College Park area. So maybe some of what I'm saying is, doesn't pertain to the city we're actually in, but we're driving towards the College Park area. And all of this whole area, I think, is probably on the not so good side anyway. So we'll get a look at a little more of the outside of the suburb area of Atlanta. The average income is $37,000. That's pretty typical of a city that's got higher crime. 18% poverty rate. Again, that might sound kind of high, but that's pretty typical as well, especially of a city that's got higher crime. There's a 27% marriage rate, which is really low. And that could be just because people here don't get married, or there's a younger population and they just haven't gotten married yet. So that number doesn't necessarily really mean anything per se. But 60% of the people that live in College Park were born in College Park or born in Georgia. 6% were foreign born and 3% are listed as non-citizens. And we know to get the non-citizen percentage, the people actually have to admit that they're here illegally. So that number is likely not correct. In 2018, they had 0 homicides. 2019, they had 6. And then 2020 and 2021, they had 10. 2022, 11. And we all know that 2020, that kick-started it with all that Summer of Floyd stuff, with the lockdowns, all that stuff kick-started crime across America. And 2020 was bad for most cities. And 2021 spiked up even higher for most cities. It got really bad. And in 2011, so that gave them a murder rate. In 2019, the murder rate was 39, which is really high. To have a murder rate of 39 per 100,000 people. The 2020 and 2021 murder rate was 65.6. That's super high. The 2022 murder rate jumped up to 79. Now you're in like St. Louis levels. So the city's murder rate, or the murders in the city, have continued to climb. I'm just going to check. Yeah, we're still a couple minutes out from the College Park. We got stuck at too many lights. So we're getting a little tour of the southern suburbs of Atlanta, that east, whatever I said it was called, East Park, and then we're going to College Park now. And we're on Irene Kidd Parkway, for those of you who like to know what roads that I'm driving on. Irene Kidd, and we would be heading west right now. And of course we're going to hit another light. Okay, so the assault rates, they go up and down, kind of like the homicides did. But since 2020, the assault rates have been between 1,000 and 1,500. Every year it's between 1,000 and 1,500. They go up and down, but they stay in that range. Baltimore is in the 900s, so it's worse than Baltimore. And Detroit is in the 1,600s. That's per 100,000 people. So the assault rates in College Park are worse than Baltimore, but better than Detroit. And those are two cities that, as far as assault rates go, you do not want to be lodged between. Baltimore's bad, and Detroit is like really bad. Their theft rates here are 3,000 to 5,000 per 100,000 people. That's super high as well. The violent crime here is 322% higher than the national average. Now I consider like 80 to 100,000 to be regular city bad. You start getting into the 200s and you start getting in the iffier category. Into the 300s, you're getting really into iffier category, like iffier, and you know, that's a level where I wouldn't move to a city that had 322%. If the city had 100% worse than the national average for violent crime, I would probably still live there, or live there if I had to work there, because that would be regular city bad. But in the 300s, you wouldn't catch me moving there. It's that starts getting to where you really have to watch your back a little too much, for my taste anyway. The property crime here as well. So we're in College Park now. So the property crime here as well is 268% higher than the national average. 268 is really high too. So you have super high violent crime and, you know, really high property crime here. Your odds of becoming a victim of a crime, any crime, 1 in 12. That's really high. The super bad cities, though, they're 1 in 8 or 9 or 10. But 1 in 12, not much better. And the year-over-year crime here shows an increase of 24%. That's super high. You do that for more than 1 year in a row, and you have a hard time pulling that back. Because that's a huge increase. I'm just checking out what the city looks like too. It doesn't look so bad here. When I GoPro cut out, when I first pulled off the freeway into that East Park or whatever it was called, that was really bad. This looks better than that. So far, at least, what we've been going through, this looks better than that did. Although we're just on this one road that looks like it's kind of their main thoroughfare or whatever. So the schools here, 30% of the kids graduate proficient at reading and math. So less than 1 out of 3. Georgia, as a state, graduates about 42%. And the U.S. graduates 48% that can read and do math at a 12th grade level. So Georgia's worse than the very poor U.S. number, and College Park is far worse than the very poor U.S. numbers and Georgia numbers. Only 77% of the people that live here completed the 8th grade. So just over 3 out of every 4. 76% graduated high school. Again, 3 out of every 4. And 23% of the people that live here have a bachelor's degree or better. So you have a population that 76% have a high school diploma, and of those, only 30% can read and do math at a 12th grade level. So when you have statistics like that, the city's not going to get any better, because your graduating kids, the ones that do graduate, aren't graduating with the skills needed to get a decent job. Or the majority of them aren't graduating with the skills. 30% is a really low number. 30% is a really low number, even for bad cities. So let's check this out. The graffiti that I saw and all the homeless people that I saw when I first got off the freeway, I haven't really seen that here. In the garbage, that when you first got off the freeway, the garbage was horrible. This is actually kind of cute down in through here. You know, all these old towns, when they look like this, when they got that older vibe to them, they always look kind of cute to me, even if it's, you know, a bad city, I guess. But we're going to turn and we're going to go up. Those are all the stats I had. I started them before we got to down here. We're going to go up a couple of these roads and see if we see signs of the city. Well, if you look off to the side, you see a lot of litter, but so far, other than that, you're not seeing anything too bad. But this is listed as the most dangerous city in the state of Georgia, but you have cities like Atlanta that don't submit the crime data to the FBI, so nobody would have any idea how bad the crime is in Atlanta, because they just, you know, don't bother to tell the FBI what the numbers are. And when cities do that, there's a reason. And so this is a suburb. They're at least submitting their data, which is good, because so many cities nowadays, they're not. And the FBI can't release the data until at least 80% of the cities submit it. So like the 2022 numbers get released in the fall of 2023. The 2023 numbers get released in the fall of 2024 by the FBI, because it takes them that long to get enough cities to submit that they can do their annual report, because they can't do it without at least 80% of the cities reporting. So you get big cities, like I think Los Angeles, I don't think they report. Atlanta doesn't report. Most of the larger cities in Florida don't report. There were cities in North Carolina that didn't report. I mean, there's cities all over the place that they just don't bother reporting. And when you don't bother reporting, you know, your city doesn't look as bad. Although when you get somebody like me that looks at the information and sees that, okay, this city reported all their crime every year regularly up through 2019 and maybe sometimes 2020, and then suddenly they just stopped doing it in 2021 and never picked it back up. That tells me the crime has gotten bad. So at least I give College Park credit for continuing to report their data. that even though it shows that it's a really dangerous city as far as their crime goes, statistically it's a bad city. Even though that is the case, they continue to release the data. And part of the reason that their numbers are so high is the population is so low that they can't absorb that. They get 10, 11 homicides, which is a lot for a city with only 14,000 people. You get 10, 11 homicides and you can't absorb it. You know, Chicago has a murder rate far less than College Park here. College Park's up in the, you know, the 70s, and Chicago's murder rate is like 22. And Chicago, you'd be like, well, how can Chicago have a worse murder rate than College Park when it's got, you know, 80 times the number of homicides? And it's just Chicago's a city large enough to absorb that much crime. They can absorb it. They got so many people. Same with New York City. New York City, if you look statistically at the crime in New York, now I don't know how much of it isn't reported, but statistically, because of the size of the city, they can absorb the crime in their numbers. I think their murder rate, the last time I looked, the murder rate in New York was like 5. I mean, it's super low. For a big city, even as bad as everybody says it is, it's relatively safe. I mean, you got all those random attacks there, but it's relatively safe. A place like this, you say, oh, there's only 10 homicides. 10's a lot for a small town. And it's really a lot for a small town like this. So the bigger cities, sometimes you think, and you can see all the garbage on the side of the road. Oh, welcome to the city of East Point. So now this is East Point. This is East Point. This is the one that was really bad. I'm going to have to look up the stats on this one, because it's right next to this College Park, so it's probably just as bad too. I'm going to have to look up the stats on this city, and I'll probably have to do a separate video if it's bad. I just wanted to write it down so that I don't forget to look it up. But I'm going to have to do a separate video on East Point if the numbers are bad like this. I'll do one of those how safe is my city videos that I do from time to time. But it's back to the cities not reporting the crime. So I'm glad they report here, because they could easily stop. And your numbers eventually, they start looking better, even though there's nothing there. And you get these websites that will kind of try to guesstimate what your numbers are, and they always seem to guesstimate better than what it really is. Because if you look up the stats of Atlanta, it makes Atlanta safer than the national average, and there's a 0 chance that Atlanta is safer than the national average. But it'll make it safer just because over the years of them not reporting, it just keeps getting better and better for these websites that think they're helping by, you know, just guesstimating what a city's crime would be. So anyway, we went through College Park a little bit. This East Point is actually worse. And like I said, if the stats on this East Point are really bad, I'm going to do a how safe is my city and do East Point. If they're not, which it looks actually worse than College Park, the actual visual of it. So we'll see, but I'm going to let this just play out a little bit more, so you're going to see a little more of East Point. But I hope you learned something from this video. If you did, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and thanks for watching.